My body stopped. My heart was still beating, but I was already dead. I still remember the light. It wasn't sunlight or from a torch or the candles burning in the halls of Sodom. It was another light, a sharp, living, almost cruel light. It appeared when everything around me stopped. The screams faded, the wind went silent, even my heart seemed to hesitate. It was in that instant, frozen between escape and memory, that I realized I was no longer in the world of the living. I was trapped between two realms, the obedience that saves and the attachment that kills. My body was fleeing, but my soul still lived in the streets of Sodom. The walls I decorated, the perfumes I bought, the feasts I attended, all of it screamed, louder than God's voice. I knew I should move forward. My feet followed the others, but my heart was still looking back. And when I turned my eyes, what was once doubt became judgment. That moment of weakness, that final glance, was enough to seal my fate in the dust of divine justice. The transformation wasn't quick. It started at my fingertips, climbed up my arm, as if the salt was leaking from the inside out. And the most terrifying part wasn't the cold or the pain, it was the understanding. I knew what was happening. I knew that command wasn't symbolic or metaphorical. It was the word of a God who doesn't lie, who, when he says, "Do not look back," is saying, "Do not desire what I have already condemned." And I desired it. With all my soul, I desired it. In that moment, I remembered the words of Enoch, words my husband used to whisper. Ancient, almost forgotten words, speaking of cosmic judgments, of fallen watchers, of cities that would burn with fire from the heavens. I thought they were stories, legends, exaggerated warnings to keep us under control. But there, petrified, in the middle of the path, I understood the Book of Enoch was more real than any square in Sodom. The fire didn't just come from the sky, it came from a holiness that does not tolerate mockery. One day, science may claim that bodies can mineralize over time, that salt builds up in the desert, that geology and wind can sculpt shapes into the hills of Jordan. But no study could explain what I felt inside. The weight of God's glory, the shame of choosing comfort over faithfulness, and the certainty that eternity had reached me the moment I chose to look back. I became a statue not just of salt, but of regret. Maybe you think you would have done differently, that you would have obeyed, that you would have run without turning. But what still hides in the corners of your soul? What are you unwilling to let burn even if God has already condemned it? Before this story goes on, I need to tell you, not every judgment is immediate, but all of them are certain. And if you keep walking, you'll see, as I did, that it's possible to look saved on the outside while being trapped on the inside. Listen to me, because my story isn't over, and maybe it's still yours. I didn't come from an important lineage. No psalms were written about me. My name isn't found among the patriarchs. My story unfolded in the background, between tents, clay jars, and women's conversations at the well. When I met Lot, he was a calm man, observant, with the eyes of someone who carried a past of faith, but a heart already torn between the God of his uncle and the charms of the world. I liked that. I thought it was beautiful. Someone with both feet on the ground who still knew how to pray. The truth is, we both wanted more space, more opportunity, more life. When we left Abraham's land, it didn't feel like turning our backs on God. It just felt like progress. We had so much wealth that even our herdsmen argued over pasture. And when Lot chose to go to the plains of the Jordan, it seemed like common sense. The valley was fertile, the river clear, the cities bustling with trade, fashion, novelty. And, in the middle of it all, shining like a jewel, was Sodom. We saw it from afar, golden under the sunset, and I said, "This is the place." For the first time, I felt like we were building a real life. Solid ground, stone walls, routine, comfort. And on the outside, everything looked like blessing. Sodom was beautiful. You need to understand that. It was alive, full of colour, full of culture. The houses were well built, the clothes were made from fabrics I had never touched, the perfumes. burned like promises, and I, a woman of tents, felt at home. For the first time, I didn't have to deal with dust on my feet, the instability of the desert, the silence of nomadic life. In Sodom, there was light at night, voices all the time, parties, markets. My heart fell in love with that place long, before my soul understood the price we would pay for it. But something there felt wrong. I sensed it, even if I never said it out loud. The people were polite, yes, but they mocked what was sacred. There was scorn in the eyes of our neighbours when we spoke of prayer. No one took the eternal seriously. Marriages were negotiated like contracts of convenience. Children were raised to manipulate, not to trust. It was like living in a garden, in bloom but with poisoned soil, beautiful on the outside, dead within. But I stayed silent. I accepted it. I told myself, it's not that bad. Every city has flaws. And time went by. Our daughters grew up there. They learned to smile like the girls of the city, to dress like them, to desire what they desired. And I let them. In the name of peace, of fitting in, of survival, I gave in. I traded simplicity for aesthetics. I traded reverence for routine. And even when Lot tried to bring the conversation back to God, I deflected with chores. God. He felt as distant as the hills we had left behind. In Sodom, God was just an inconvenient memory. Now I know. The worst kind of exile is not being torn from a land. It's planting roots where God has already declared judgment. I wasn't torn from Sodom. I planted myself in it. I built routine, formed bonds, made a life. And every little choice that seemed harmless was actually taking me a step further from obedience. That slow, subtle distance from God's presence is more dangerous than any sudden fall, because it happens silently, on ordinary days, through choices no one questions. And by the time you notice, you no longer recognize yourself, nor his voice. But everything began to change one night. Just a regular night, an unexpected visit. What looked like just another dinner with strangers would become the beginning of the end. And even then, I still believed everything would return to normal. For a long time I pretended not to see. I told myself that children were just being children, and that all they wanted was to play. But I knew that the sons of the men in the city were not innocent. There was cruelty in their games, laughter laced with mockery, no reverence, left in how they spoke of sacred things, and still I let it go. Because it was easier to let my daughters blend in than to explain something I no longer lived out with conviction myself. The truth is, our house seemed full, but it was empty of faith. Lot still prayed sometimes in a low voice when he thought, no one was watching. I watched. I listened. But instead of joining him, I sighed and carried on with my day. Abraham kept calling on the God of heaven, raising altars among the mountains. And us? We were just surviving. It's strange to realize that faith doesn't disappear all at once. It fades. It dims like embers without wind until you convince yourself that everything's fine the way it is. I used to think a blessed life was a stable life. Our house was beautiful, solid, surrounded by fine fabrics and things we never had in the desert. The mirrors showed me each day a well-kept woman, dressed in clothes others envied. But somewhere along the way, I stopped truly seeing myself. I began to measure blessings by comfort. And when the heart gets comfortable, it stops listening. God speaks through unrest, and I was too busy trying to make Sodom feel like home. The city gave us much: food, clothing, status, distraction. But it slowly took away what mattered most. Our spiritual sensitivity, our alertness, our fear of the Lord. Even when Lot gave warnings, said something wasn't right, that men had lost all sense of justice, I would smile, change the subject, brush it off. I preferred to believe that every place had its flaws, and it was an exaggeration to think of leaving. After all, where else would we find all of this? But that day, everything changed. 2 men arrived. They weren't ordinary. Their presence brought a hush over the house. When Lot welcomed them, I could tell even he was different. Cautious, respectful, hasty. He knew something was about to happen. The way the visitors looked, the way they spoke, calm yet firm, everything about them said they weren't here just passing through. And still, I baked bread like it was any other evening, as if routine could hide what heaven had already decided. It didn't take long for the city to hear about their arrival. Men began gathering outside, first curious, then loud, then violent. They shouted, they demanded, they wanted to break in, they wanted to expose. They respected nothing, not another man's home, not dignity, not the presence of the sacred. That's when I saw clearly what Sodom truly was. A city without restraint, without limits, without fear. And I had called that place home. Lot tried to intervene. He stepped outside, pleaded with them. But they laughed, mocked him, threatened him, said they'd do worse to him than to the visitors. My heart pounded. Everything in me said to run, to escape. But it also said to turn back, to save something, to protect what we had built. That's where the conflict lives, when God calls. But the world still whispers that it has something left to offer. Faith pulls, attachment anchors. The visitors didn't wait. They reached out, pulled Lot back in and shut the door. Then they did something that made me tremble. They struck the men outside with blindness. One gesture, one command, and all of them were groping, stumbling, confused. God wasn't whispering anymore. He was judging. And still, even then, a part of me was still asking, is it really that serious? Then they spoke, directly, coldly, without hesitation. Leave now. Take whoever belongs to you. This city will be destroyed. It wasn't a threat. It was a sentence, a late warning, a narrow door about to close. I looked at Lot. He believed immediately. But me? I stayed silent. I thought about all we would have to leave behind. I thought about the curtains, the vases, the rings, the memories. I thought of Sodom the way someone thinks of home. But it wasn't home. It was a trap. We were told to call our sons-in-law. Lot ran to them, tried to convince them. They laughed, said he was crazy, too religious, that it was just another night, that everything would work itself out. They didn't come. And something in me broke right there. Because I understood them. It all seemed like an exaggeration to me too. I also thought it was happening too fast. I also thought maybe we could bargain more time with God. That night, the angels didn't argue. They just grabbed us. Literally. By the hand. We were pulled by force. Because judgment was already set. Because our hesitation had nearly condemned us. We were torn from the city. No time to pack. No time for goodbyes. And even with my daughters beside me, even with Lot pulling me forward, a part of me kept screaming that there was still something I should have taken with me. It's hard to explain what it's like to run from a place you once called home. It feels like running from yourself. Each step was pain. Every time I heard a scream behind us, I wanted to turn back, to say it wasn't fair, that there were good people there, that my life had meaning. But God doesn't argue with our memories. He saves those who obey. And that's hard, because sometimes obedience doesn't just mean leaving, it means never looking back. As we ran, the sky began to change, as if the night itself were bleeding. Flames started slicing the horizon. The girls cried. Lot prayed silently. And I tried to keep going. But my soul felt heavy, like my steps were tied to everything I had left behind. And I didn't know if I could keep going. It felt like walking with a free body and a heart, still bound to the past. And maybe you judge me now. Maybe you think I was weak. But let me ask you honestly, could you do it? Leave everything in minutes? Trust the invisible when everything you love is on fire? Not look back when every memory is screaming your name? Say goodbye to comfort to embrace a promise you don't even understand? I hesitated. Not because I didn't believe, but because I wasn't ready to lose. And that's what almost destroyed us. Not the city, but the delay in obedience. The desire to blend faith with the world. To try and save what God had already condemned. That kind of hesitation corrodes the soul. It weakens obedience. It puts us at risk even when God is still holding our hand. And that's where the story turns. because even while I was being pulled, my soul stayed behind. The sun hadn't even risen when the first crack split the sky. It wasn't a normal thunder, it was different, deeper, more serious. The ground trembled slightly, as if the earth itself knew what was about to happen. The Beni, dust in the air changed colour, and then, in the distance, I saw lights that didn't come from the sun. It was fire, not man's fire. It was the kind of fire that only comes from a God tired of warning. The angels urged us, "Don't stop, don't look, don't hesitate." The words carried urgency, but also mercy. They knew what it meant to run with a wounded heart. They knew obedience isn't easy when your soul is in pieces. And even so, the command was clear. Run, go forward, don't look back. The sentence was sealed. Time was up. Judgment had begun. Behind us, the sounds became unbearable. Screams, crashes, the sound of walls collapsing, the sound of lives being erased in pride. I tried not to hear it, but it was impossible. The city I called home screamed like a woman, in labour, but instead of giving birth to life, it groaned in the birth of death. It was the end. And still, even while running, something in me whispered, "Just one more look." And that's what I did. Just a moment. A slip. A fraction of a second. My neck turned, my eyes searched, and everything inside me froze. I saw Sodom wrapped in flames, like an altar of sin burning beneath justice. But more than seeing the city, I saw what I had lost. I saw my broken identity, my ruined home, my attachments turning to dust. And I saw that God was right, and that I was too late. The transformation began without warning. My feet still touched the ground, but something inside me stopped responding. The cold crept up my fingers, the weight sank into my limbs, as if the very air had become heavier. There was no physical pain, but there was another kind. The pain of understanding, once and for all, that I had been warned, that I had time, that God had been patient. But my love for the past shouted louder than my faith. And this time, there was no one to hold my hand. I was alone. Lot was running, ahead. So were my daughters. And I stayed, stuck between what was and what could never be again. A statue, yes, but not just of salt. A statue of late repentance, of living memory, of eternal warning. Because what killed me wasn't God's judgment. It was my love for what he had already condemned. Frozen there, I understood the weight of obedience. Not as punishment, but as protection. God didn't forbid me to look back out of jealousy or control. He wanted to save me. He wanted to teach me that faith looks forward, that salvation is never found in the ruins of the past. That deliverance always lies in the next step, never in the last attachment. But I wanted one last breath, and that's what I got. God's justice does not delay, it only waits. And when it comes, it is complete. It leaves no question unanswered, no sin without weight. It doesn't delight in destruction, but it honours the warnings that were ignored. And if I had truly believed, if I had left Sodom with both body and soul, my story would be different. But I looked back, and that look cost me my life. Now I am silence. I am a symbol. I am a reminder that hesitation can be fatal, that it means nothing to appear obedient if your heart still longs for Egypt, that you cannot walk with God while looking behind. What you love defines what you obey. What you won't let go of will be what holds you back when it's time to run. And when heaven shuts the door, you won't get to decide anymore. Maybe you're running now. Maybe God has already pulled you out from where you were. But the real question is, did your soul come too? Or does it still live among the sins you won't admit? Don't wait for the salt to reach you before realizing he was right, that his word was protection, not prohibition. Don't look back. Never again. If you made it this far, it's because something inside you is also running from Sodom. Maybe still stumbling, maybe still confused, but running. And that's already grace. Because God's voice is still calling you. Because the door is still open. Because unlike me, you still have time, but time is not infinite, and neither is God's patience. He waits, but he won't delay judgment forever. I wish I could go back. I wish I could say I turned again and was met with mercy. But what I did can't be undone. I was warned. I heard. I pretended to obey. And I hesitated. That hesitation was the sentence. And that's why now, even in silence, my story still speaks. It speaks to you, to the one tired of blending in with the world but still in love with its comfort, to the one who believes in God but still negotiates with sin. You know what your Sodom is. You know what God has already asked you to leave, but that you still hide in your heart. Maybe it's a relationship, a habit, a resentment, a pride. Maybe it even looks good on the outside, but it's been killing you inside. The Holy Spirit has already spoken, already touched you, and now once again is asking you, run. Don't look, trust, don't delay. Obedience isn't easy. No one blames you for being afraid. But faith doesn't need strength, it needs surrender. And maybe your deliverance won't come from what you hold on to, but from what you let go of. The road of repentance isn't pretty or comfortable, but it is safe. It is clean. And its end is God. A God who doesn't want to see you frozen between guilt and the past. A God who wants to see you alive. And if you don't know where to start, I'll tell you. Start with honesty. Tell God what still holds you back. Say the name of your Sodom. Cry over what you still haven't been able to leave. He hears. He understands. And he waits. But not for long. And maybe today is your last warning before the rain begins. And maybe this story is your chance not to become a statue of what could have been. I don't know where you are. But I know you're only a few steps from God. Maybe 30. 30 steps from where you fell to where you begin again. 30 steps from despair to grace. 30 steps to leave the salt behind and bathe in living water. And if you feel like this is your time, don't wait. Don't bargain. Don't overthink. Just say, Lord, I want to come back. We've prepared something to help you return. A guide, a 30-step journey to find God again. It's not magic. It's a devotional. A compass for those who longer know how to pray. If you feel like you need this, it's right there in the first link in the description. Because you're not salt yet. You can still live. And if this story awakens something in you, there's more you need to see. It's on your screen now. It's about a man who heard the heavens and wrote things many tried to hide. They begged me not to write this. You'll see why. If you have the courage, click and watch. It will leave a mark.